So, Adel, we'll cut to you for hopefully a game that you've been playing, which has been embargoed, which we'll all be talking about because it's a classic, an absolute classic
Yes,
game.
that game.
Thomas
That game.
Was Alone.
Yes.
Is this your first time?
No, I've played Thomas Was Alone before. I didn't quite finish it. I got to around 8.4, I think, today, just because I had some other things going on that sort of took time in a way that I didn't realize.
It's very...
It's almost all the game, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it goes to, what, 10? 10 tens?
Have you got to, like, the gravity switching part yet?
I got to the point where Thomas and them are gone, and now all the AIs are jumping through hoops and bells and getting powers through clouds, basically.
Little ones.
Yeah.
The lemmings.
So we got the code from the publisher for the Switch port,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what prompted this.
On Switch. It's crazy that it's not already on Switch, but yeah.
Yeah, I was shocked, to be honest.
Yeah.
What a good game. It plays great on the Switch.
Who would know?
Yeah, I mean, re-Switch port. So when I was playing Hades, for example, I noticed a big difference between playing it in handheld and playing it with my Pro controller. I could feel the difference between the control mechanisms, inputs. I think this game was great with the Joy-Cons. I wanted to play it sort of curled up in bed in the cold. Everything felt tight enough that it didn't matter. I mean, I didn't actually end up. I was going to try it on the big screen, but I didn't get around to it. Mostly because I realized it didn't matter. Like even if it was tight enough, I could get through everything. Nothing felt loose. So, like, it's not like it would get tighter, if that makes sense. So it would just be like, is it as good on the Pro controller as the Joy-Cons? Well, probably, because the Pro controller is a better input device.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a shapy platformer. For those of you who don't know,
just a fundamental puzzle platformer. It's like, but it has a decent little bit of story. So
yeah, it's got a little charm to it, I think.
I think that's the entirety of why you want to play this game. There's a couple. So I mean, that's why I was sad I didn't end up finishing it, because I remember some bits being like, I'm wrinkling my brain. How do I do this? And I mean, partly through memory, but also, I mean, the first, I think, 5 worlds are very straightforward, to the point where I actually have to say, having gone through it before and sort of know the beats of the narrative, there's a bit of a lull. Maybe at 3 or 4. Like, when I say worlds, it's like version numbers, right? So you start with like is it not 0.1 to 1.0, or is it 1.1? It doesn't matter. A numbering system that goes 1 point and 1.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then it'll not go up a number. And when you have like the 5 different shapes, like, and you're just like, there's like a handful of levels that are just like, make them all go around, and you're like, cool. Well, I've already solved this puzzle of the like Chris, little orange boy, needs to climb on to Thomas before he can get onto John, and he'll need all of them to, like, we need to make a little staircase. It's like, okay, now I'm just doing all these little puzzles together, but not in a like, wait, which one do I know? It's like, I know exactly, like, I look at this level and I know exactly what I need to do, and then it's just a pain in the ass of moving the things around. And I could, like, it's unfortunate because, like, I was bored, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, the plot's not so new, the music's great, the music's fantastic, but like, going back to this game, it was like, oh, I don't want to do this level. This level is not challenging, it's not doing much, and all the plot. Sorry, let me go back a step. Almost the entire plot is done through this like voiceover narrator who sometimes speak for the various blocks, like their thoughts, and sometimes just sort of describes what they're doing. It's almost always the first moves in a level.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite right away, but usually like you hit a threshold hitbox somewhere in the level, and it'll be like, and then Chris felt this way or whatever. Most of the time, it's just like level starts, some talking, and maybe there's a quick line in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, like if you wanted to just live through the plot of the game, it's just starting each level, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is not like a critique, it's just like where it is. So when you couple that with, I've been here before, and this level is actually going to take a couple minutes, but it's a couple minutes that are completely transparent to me, and they're not even finicky platforming. Like it's just the moving, because you have 5 shapes to control. You hit your shoulder buttons, L and R, to like rotate through the shapes.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of like ferrying people back and forth, and it's like, and there wasn't a puzzle there. It was just doing it. One snap passed, the game picked up again, and I was fine. But there was definitely this lull.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously, I guess your mileage will vary with some of the other levels. Maybe other people can see the solutions right away. But this was definitely a couple levels where it's mostly just moving people from left to right, roughly, like beginning of the stage to end of the stage, and there's not like you have to do it in this magic order, otherwise everything will break. Having said that, I forgot how fun the game was in its finickiness when you have both James and Thomas. James being the guy who has inverted gravity, and Thomas being regular, and James is the same size as Thomas, same jump speed. So so often the levels were like x-axis mirrors, but you'd have to like trip a switch or do this other thing for one to let the other through, and so you were having to think of the level upside down and right side up constantly.
Yeah.
And then there are moments in the game where, because of their gravity, they will cling to each other because they're falling into each other. But one of the interesting mechanics that can seem annoying, but I think is really integral to how much you could appreciate how to solve these puzzles, is when a shape is on a shape, you can kind of ferry them around and they ride on top of you.
Mm-hmm.
Except sometimes, like with the gravity situation, where you'll just sort of walk and they'll go away.
Or when you're on the bouncing block
the bouncing
as well.
One, because they're bouncing, they hit you and then they go up, and if you go to the right, they drop down again. And so what you have to do is kind of switch between the two shapes and move them in parallel. And actually, to do the James Thomas interactions quickly, you're basically like, I'm on James, I move 4 pixels to the right, switch to Thomas, move 4 pixels to the right, switch to, but of course, like so that they move in tandem while they're stuck to each other, until you get to the point where you can free one of them or jump off of one of them or swap spots, like purposely run off, and then they separate into the different parts of the level. But there's like spots, and I want to say it's around level 5 or 6, I think, where there's like multiple spots where you have to do this, like, it could be slow or quick, but like this, I'm going to move a bit, then I'm going to have to switch and move a bit, then I'm going to move a bit, then switch, because they have to stay together across kind of empty space. And then in order to hit the next part of the puzzle, one of them has to jump, and then the other one will fall into them. And you sort of go up and or down in the space of the level based on them being able to cling to each other. And I think that was my favorite mechanic of the game, because it made you think in multiple directions. They were similar enough shapes that it wasn't too difficult to flip your thinking, because they both had the same range. But they had to work together, and you had to figure out that it mattered that you only moved a bit and then another bit, and it really made you feel like you were working as a team.
Yeah, where you getting one down to his place, and
yeah.
It's just remembering to jump as the right character, though, isn't it? Like if you.
Oh, and that's why I bring it up, because like if you did it perfectly, it'd be like me. But most of the time, it's like, fuck, yeah, I gotta go back and like redo it. But that felt like that's the opposite of that like lull I was feeling in World 3, where it's like, I kind of think I need to do this thing. I'm still not sure it, because it's like off screen where I need to go. But I'm pretty sure I need to do this, and actually, it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And so I need to like master the skill. And I think that type of puzzling, at least up until this point, didn't overstay its welcome. So like there were a few spots where you really need to do that. There's a few spots where you need to do like the tandem jumping with the James and Thomas to like move the pair of them up or down. But that was it. It wasn't like suddenly added into the middle of a 7 people grid or whatever.
Yes, yeah.
The one thing last thing I'll say about the Switch port, and then I'll let you guys actually talk, is I wish, and this is actually just, maybe I just didn't notice it before, but of course you have the in the bottom right corner, right, it has the like little color swatches of the various characters who are in the game, and L1 goes to the left, R1 goes to the right. But I think maybe it was because I was trying to finish it kind of quicker, because I was like, oh, this other thing came up. I'm not sure I can finish this 3 or 4 hour game today like I wanted to for recording. And I noticed that my brain kept wanting to scroll from their physical location left and right, like the relative left and right location, because it was L1, R1, but it's still just the order in the bottom corner.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
yeah.
So like, especially when you're trying to do this finicky things, you're like, oh, that guy's to the left, I'll just hit left. No, that's not what you're doing. You're now over there on the other side of the map, because he was to the right in the initial ordering.
Yeah, that's the issue I find playing on control. Does the Switch not have touch where you could switch between them, or is that an option?
Didn't even think about touching the screen, Lucy.
Because
I'm literally gonna grab it right now.
I don't know if that was an option on Vita, but Switch, a lot of the times they don't implement that the touch functionality, which is strange, especially when you have stuff like point and clicks. It's like this would be immensely helpful, but they don't do it. But,
yeah.
So Aadil's live testing.
No,
Hey, it's the best way to review something, right?
I'm just pounding the screen and nothing's happening.
Typical. They never usually implement these things when they'd be so very useful.
I'm surprised that you are the advocate for touch controls. I guess motion controls are the ones you hate. Never mind. I'm just being dumb.
I'm just thinking if they had it on Vita, because that's where I played it, and I can't remember.
How good would Thomas Was Alone be if it had motion controls in a way that you were holding your Switch and you tilted from side to side to kind of move them across the screen, and I don't know, lifted it to jump them, and you know, whatever motion control thing there would be, but like it would be a completely different way to play that game, right?
As long as you can turn it off.
There we go.
That's fair.
That's the Lucy I know.
As long as you can turn it off, it'd be fine. If you wanted to play in that absurd way, but yeah. Anything else, Aadil? Any
I mean, those were the big thoughts I had, which were basically wanting to say something about the actual port, and the couple that like being early in the game, being kind of bored surprised me, because I really loved the game when it came out, when I first played it. I
agree with you. Like, I've played that game over 10 times probably on multiple different systems, and I agree with you. Some of those, those middle levels do become a bit tedious when you're right, Aadil. You are mostly there on subsequent playthroughs just for the whole whimsy of it, and Danny Wallace's narration story. And yeah, some of those middle levels can get a bit slow, get a bit tedious once you know what you're doing, once you've played it enough times, because it is bite-sized enough where I did return to it, like, probably once a year for a couple. So I hadn't in a while, but yeah, maybe I might get that Switch version when it's like sale. Everything on it, I'm like, Wii U.
Nice.
And mobile.
What was your experience with it, Ben?
So I I bought it on Steam this week. I don't know where I played this game. right? So I looked at my Steam library, like, I don't have Thomas Was Alone Here. I looked at my PlayStation, like, I don't have Thomas Was Alone Here.
It might have been a Plus game.
What,
Did you ever let your Plus
I mean,
lapse or something?
so it might have been a Plus game because I've switched between 2 different accounts on Plus games.
Yeah.
So a lot of my previous Plus games were on a different account because that was the master, and then this was the sub. No, that's not right. That was a sub account, and then I could turn the one that I had into a master account. So that's now my Plus one. So it might have been on PlayStation, but I don't know. But it was on Steam for like £3 during the Lunar sale, or whatever they called this Chinese New Year based sale. So I picked it up and started through again, and I didn't have that sort of lull. So I think I've just got into the 4th set of puzzles. So I'm at 4.1, and through sort of the through that 3-point set of 10 sort of puzzles, I didn't kind of have that lull, but that might be because I've only played it once. Unlike Lucy, I haven't returned to it. I played through it once when I got it, like, who knows?
In a dream.
Yeah. But maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe. So yeah, I think I'm experiencing it fresh enough to not sort of feel that. But there were a lot of times where I'm like, oh, I instantly know what to do. So there was at least some muscle memory or just memory of being like, I know this, and doing it. And I felt that some of those times, especially in the initial stages, you get to the end before the narration's finished. And so I just sort of like, I enjoy the narration, so I'll just sit just before the end and wait for it to play out, and then
that
go
as
on.
well.
Yeah.
Where you're just like powering through, and you're like, oh, he's talking.
Yep.
And you like, do this like mid-air wobble. Where like, I'm jumping, it's gonna be a perfect landing. Oh no, pull away. There is something extremely satisfying when you get like a jump timed perfectly into the slot to the end of the level, versus being like, meh, 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 meh. And there's some really good rewarding feelings of those levels. Like there's some where you like have to bounce to finish the level because the last like slot is midair.
Yes.
And it just makes you feel like you did the thing.
Like Pennsylvania, jump in the air with the whip.
Yeah.
Glowing up. Freeze frame.
I think it goes for that, doesn't it? It goes for those kind of like gratifying platformer moments. Like that's what it wants you to feel. It wants you to feel gratified by completing these levels and by doing these things. And apart from your experience of this sort of lull in the middle, like I think it achieves that through most of the individual levels. Really, that it does mix it up enough and introduces things on that nice little kind of like drip fed sort of way that it changes it up enough as you play through to keep it fresh enough to keep you wanting to go through to see what the next thing will be, to see what the kind of the next challenge and what the next set of, or what the next like block will be and what they can do, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good way to you haven't quite got there, but there's there's a series of levels where when they first introduce it, it's basically, so you have those like buttons, right? Or switches, and they're white, and then later in the game they become color coded, so a certain block has to like trip them.
Yep, I remember that bit,
And then at a certain point in the game, you've got like a couple of characters, and there's a part where I thought I might get bored, but I didn't, or I was like, oh, I see how this is going. But it was fine because the gameplay, it was fluid enough. Pun mildly intended, because it was a water lowering level. But it was basically John and Claire, I think. Claire's the big swimming block, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And it was just the two of them, and you're going down the level, and you're like, now what do I do? John's stuck on Claire, and then you see, oh, actually, since the last change to the level, a little blue switch has appeared on the corner. So Claire swims over and hits it, and then the water drops some. But now instead, John has to jump up and hit a thing, and it's actually just not quite alternating. It's just like looking for the switch that literally isn't there until the previous switch gets hit to kind of drop you to navigate the level. And you'd think that's like too simplistic, but the way you hit the switch is just varied enough, and the level's just short enough that you are still mostly coasting off of the notion of teamwork and switching. And I think maybe that's my favorite type of level. Same thing with the John and Thomas, or not John, James and Thomas levels. Now that I think about it, is when I have to work in tandem, but I only have 2 or 3 moving parts, so I can feel like I can do it dynamically. So I feel like they're constantly moving, not fighting with which one am I trying to switch to. Oh, like a lot of the puzzles end up being like this person does their thing for half the level, then we forget about them, and then we come back before, and that's good because it allows you to use multiple powers. But at the same time, you don't ever feel like you're fully controlling them all as much as you do in those 2 to 3 like AIs in your control. I think that's, for me, that's the sweet spot of, I know exactly what's going on. I have to switch between them. I have to be dynamic, but I only have to remember sort of a couple of things, and the game's only asking me to do a couple of things. And it's like the design is smart enough to know that when they escalate to like more, they can't have the puzzles be like quick switching ones, if that makes sense. And I guess maybe it's just I like the pacing of those more finicky quick switching type puzzles in the game than the like send 5 tendrils out and then retreat and then figure out what you need to do next in which order. So that's my personal.
No, I agree with that. I think that the game is strongest when it's only focusing on a couple of characters and making a slightly more complex run through when you only have a couple of things to work with, rather than it being almost this sort of very set puzzle. It's like you have 5 things: move this one, do X, move this one, do Y, move this one, do Z, move this one, do A, move this one, do B, and you're finished. I think it works better when you only have 2 or 3 parts to move and the extent of the abilities of those parts, but it's dynamic enough in that, I've got to this point with this one, I know I now need to switch and move along with this, but actually that's then made me switch back to this character to do something, and then maybe I can switch down to this one. Like, I think that is where it is best. So, Lucy, what about you? What do you have a preference on these sort of levels? Or?
No, I agree with Aadil more in that there is a lull of those some of those levels where it is just okay. I'm moving this character from A to B rather than puzzle solving. I haven't played the game in a while, but I know that. I think I just really enjoy that the puzzle platforming takes a backseat for me, which is unusual because I really like platformers. A lot of it is that the interaction in between like the characters and just giving those characters like a personality, even though they're just little cubes and shapes. And it's greater than the sum of its parts. Probably because there's just been so many more platformers since that do things better than Thomas Was Alone. It's still a great feeling game to go back to even now, but I think just still the wrappings, the audio, the dialogue, and just that interconnection between the characters. I really love like how Chris is the jealous one and like Claire is body conscious, and Thomas just he couldn't care about anything. Thomas is just that Thomas was alone because Thomas is just vacant and he doesn't even notice what's going on around him. So.
Thomas is just general white protagonist, isn't he? Like in every other video game, he is alone because it is only him moving through a set of spaces irrelevant of anyone else.
I am sad that they didn't continue to genre bend in the Thomas Was Alone universe, like make a little cover shooter.
That's Thomas Was Alone too.
Yeah.
8 days in Fallujah.
Yowza! I think you mean that's
No,
Thomas Clancy TM Ghost Recon Wildlands.
Ooh. Very good. Very good. I just looked. I couldn't remember the date that Thomas Was Alone originally came out. It's 2012.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I didn't play it for many years after because I first played it later and hold on, when did the Vita come out? Actually, I don't even know.
Fuck knows.
Yeah, 2011. So I must have played it. Who cares? Anyway, the Vita's dead now. Good platform, but yeah, I'll always have memories of playing Thomas Was Alone on Vita. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Good. Fond memories.
Yes, very fond memories. And I remember the day when it came to Xbox, I was like, on a Friday, I was like, I'm going to finish work and I'm going to go home and nerd out, eat some food, and play Thomas Was Alone.
Nice.
No time for people and social things. Remember when those things were a thing? Didn't do them then, don't do them now, it's fine. I have squares for friends.
That's all you need.
Yes.
That's it.
And I meant you too. You two
Oh,
are
yeah,
squares.
that's true. We are. Absolutely. Goddamn fucking nerds.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our chat on Thomas Was Alone.
www.outoflives.net